Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr. Today, we're going to be talking about a little bit on this hideous statue that's in New York now, I guess, to uplift abortion, because that's where our society is, especially in New York, I guess, at the courthouse. So if you haven't seen that, we can talk about that. Also, going to touch a bit about Democrats. They're flipping out because Ron DeSantis had X'd out this particular course. It was an AP course, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's coming for African American history." I don't know, their long sort of con to convince everyone that everyone who has an R in front of their name is racist. But Ron DeSantis has taken bold steps against wokeness and education instead of indoctrination. And so this is not, they do teach African American studies or African American Black history or whatever, just in normal curriculum. This is an AP course that had like stuff like intersectionality and critical race theory and queer theory in it. So this is like a big thing that they're trying to make, similar to the Don't Say Gay bill. So we'll have to debunk these folks all over again. But I guess if it ain't broke, don't just keep doing it again. So that's just what the Dems will continue to do, and I'm sure they'll continue to do through his entirety of whatever political career decisions Ron DeSantis decides to make. Also, he made some comments regarding the chair race for RNC. So, that's really interesting. So I want to play that for you guys, and also one of Biden's nominees for a judgeship is missing some critical information that she at least should have learned somewhere in law school. So we're gonna go ahead and go through those things today and a little bit more if we got the time. So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles that I've written, different videos that I've put up. You can go to my website, put in your email so you can make sure that you're staying up to date. You never know when big tech might try to separate us from each other. So make sure that I at least have your email so you guys can stay up to date on what's going on. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blackteennews.com/donate. It does cost to stream. Run my website. Actually, I got a something in the email today about my website. Got to pay a bill. So if you like to support with that overhead, I very much appreciate if you're able to. Anything helps, whether it's $20, $50, $100, whatever you want to do. It's funny, like watching like other streams and they have like super chat and people are like sending all this stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I am not monetized on YouTube, at least not yet. So I don't have such things going on. So I just, make my appeal, and sometimes you guys move, sometimes you don't. So just want to throw that out there. But if you can't do it, it's like, seriously, I thank you guys for watching live, for commenting. That does help. It helps when you, of course, tag other people, when you send my stuff to other people and say, hey, you should check out this girl, I like what she has to say, and please support her. So make sure that there's also, if you're on YouTube, even if you're subscribed, there's a notification bell. And make sure that you're also following on Facebook. And I think you can also control what kind of interaction you get on Facebook. Like if you're following and you see their content first. So go ahead and do the little extra mile so we can make sure that we see each other. I know, like on maybe it was Tuesday, I went live, and I don't think anybody got notification really on Facebook. So let's try to make sure that we're seeing each other. Also check out different merch on my website. I'll just show one or two things before I jump into everything, like the "You Are Not That Special" with the cute little mugs as well. So you can trigger someone in your life or make them laugh. There's demented people who will laugh at such things. My sister is one of them, but there's like normal black tea gear, and I'll have more black tea gear that people have asked, so I will add some more stuff to my website. And also, my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, is available. Sorry, that is not my book. My book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, is available on pre-order right now for ebooks. So if you want to get that for Barnes and Noble, if you want to get that on Amazon, you can go right to blackteennews.com. It's actually like the splash page, like the first thing that pops up, the cover page for it. So very easy to find. Otherwise, if you prefer the print book, you can just go ahead and put in your email and I'll alert you when that is available for sale. So I'm very excited for you guys to participate and read that book. I worked very hard on it. So you guys know that I like to start off with something humorous. And so the AP is so woke. Expect even when they do like stylized stuff or give you tips for grammar. And so today was an example. So I think this is it right here. We recommend avoiding general and often dehumanizing the labels such as the poor, the mentally ill, the French. so, so I'll read the rest of it, but the French is what like is throwing everybody off. The disabled, the college educated. Instead, use wording such as people with mental illness and use these descriptions only when clearly relevant. Um, so only describe people as the French when it is absolutely necessary, because we would not, we all disdain the French apparently, and we don't want to put such labels on people, especially if they happen to be French. And if they are the French, don't refer to them as the French, refer to them as the ones with the Frenchness or people suffering with Frenchness. Or and then people jumped in the comments and were like, had like titles from the Batman. We're like, what about the Batman or the Suicide Squad? And it went on and on. But I don't, how can you write this tweet and think that everyone is going to take you absolutely serious when you make something like that? I have no idea how you can just think everyone just would not bat an eye after seeing the French paired up with the mentally ill and say you have to avoid these labels. That is, I think that's hysterical. I think that's hilarious. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on. So I want to talk about this hearing right now, because this is pretty amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and play a questioning during a confirmation hearing.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all of you. Judge on the far end, tell me what Article 5 of the Constitution does.
Article 5 is not coming to mind at the moment.
Okay. How about Article 2?
Neither is Article 2.
Okay. Do you know what purposivism is?
In my 12 years as an Assistant Attorney General and my 9 years serving as a judge, I was not faced with that precise question. We are the highest trial court in Washington State, so I'm frequently faced with issues that I'm not familiar with, and I thoroughly review the law, research, and apply the law to the facts presented to me.
Well, you're going to be faced with it if you're confirmed. I can assure you of that.
So, now, to be fair, I think those are tougher questions than what is a woman. So, that could probably stump, the average person, I guess. But She's not the average person though. She's seeking, an appointment here, and seeing that the Democrats have the majority, I don't foresee her probably not getting that nomination. You'd have to be pretty darn bad, and that's just another, terrible repercussion of Republicans not winning the Senate, not having the Senate, and there's a lot to blame to go around, and there's some particular people we can point our fingers to, but we won't get into that today. But it's unfortunate that we didn't win the Senate. So I don't expect the average person to know what the articles off the top of their head, but just so you know, here's Article 2 and here's Article 5. So as far as the other question that he had, now people can be prepped to know different answers for stuff, and they can also be prepped um to answer things that they obviously don't know. So I think she tried with that and saying, I haven't been asked that particular question before as a attorney general and as a judge, but I do look at the law and I study the law, etc. But his question wasn't about a particular law; it was about an interpretation of the text, like textualism, etc. So that's something that can, I guess, go over your head, but that should be something that's drilled into you a bit. So I don't know, you could chalk it up to performance anxiety, but she didn't do well, and with that, so that's going around. I think that just pretty much happened today. Ooh, not a great start. Not a great start. But again, she'll probably be confirmed. You got to be pretty darn terrible to not get confirmed. And unfortunately, with a lot of the work that Trump bragged about with having all these judicial appointments, if Biden just appoints a lot himself, that can begin to kind of undo all the braggadocious things that we were excited about. If they just fill up more spots than he did. So really, really unfortunate that we did not win the Senate. So just wanted to share. And some of the comments under that video on Twitter, people were like, oh gosh, we're so screwed. Even Democrats were like saying, oh, I heard Republican confirmations were bad, but this is just terrible. and I don't know which confirmation hearings they're talking about that they thought were terrible for Republicans. But well, I can think of one, but not for like a judicial position. I think that's just something what they're saying, but even they could admit that that was not a good look. And I know her name. I cannot pronounce it, so I'm sorry about that. I'm pretty sure that's why he said judge at the end. It's a complicated name, complicated order, but yeah, very interesting clip there. Let's move on. So Ron DeSantis. Well, let's first deal with the RNC. So the RNC is having an election, and so that's every party has like a state party, and they have their delegates who they elect to go to convention to select the members of the leadership of the Republican Party. My sister actually ran for chair in 2019. I actually ran her campaign. It was very close, but I won't get into the story today. But everyone has like a national committee man, a national committee woman, and those folks are going to vote in the chair of the Republican Party on the national level. Now, disclaimer, the current chair was my former boss. When I worked in the Michigan Republican Party, Ronna McDaniel was the chair of the Michigan Republican Party. And then we did so well in Michigan, and she was like the only chair in the country who pledged her delegate to Trump. That really got his attention. They decided to pick her. So she was the chair and remained a favorite of his. And so there's a lot of people who aren't fond of Ronna. And but Trump, kind of excelled her forward. So she's raised a ridiculous amount of money. And that's very important for the chair to do. But unfortunately, we have had some losses. Now, we've had some wins. And Ron DeSantis is going to say that we've had some losses, like basically since the time she's been in. One of the wins that we had, or two of the wins that we've had while she was there was, he got elected. So 2018 didn't go exactly in our favor, but normally it's expected when you get a Republican or a Democrat, whoever takes the leadership position as far as the White House, you're going to lose seats elsewhere. So I don't think 2018 was as bad as it could have been for Republicans. Kind of like Democrats are celebrating that it wasn't as bad as it should have been for them this year. So I don't know if people are looking at 2018 in the fairest of light, but yeah, we had a terrible situation in this past election. So it's a tight race. From what I know, Ronna's folks seem pretty confident. But I don't know. It's getting pretty interesting. It's getting very interesting, especially if you look on sort of Twitter and other folks, they're really supporting her opposition. But again, a lot of these people who are voting are people who've been in the party for a long time. A lot of these people are elderly. A lot of these folks have never had attention on them like they've had, getting all these phone calls and media, attention. It's just usually a very quiet election, and it's favors incumbents so well. I don't know. I think people are just kind of do the same sort of thing. It was Lee Zeldin, who did so well in New York. People wanted him to run, but he just, was like the RNC. It's just the race is such an incumbent focus sort of thing. So anyway, I'm going to play Ron DeSantis's comments regarding this.
Well, we've had 3 substandard election cycles in a row, 18, 20, and 22. And I would say of all 3 of those, 22 was probably the worst, given the political environment of a very unpopular president in Biden. Huge majorities of the people think the country's going in the wrong direction. That is an environment that's tailor-made to make big gains in the House and the Senate and state houses all across the country, and yet that didn't happen. And in fact, we even lost ground in the U.S. Senate. And so, I think we need a change. I think we need to get some new blood in the RNC. I like what Harmeet Dillon has said about getting the RNC out of D.C. Why would you want to have your headquarters in the most Democrat city in America? It's more Democrat than San Francisco is. So I think you get it in real parts of the country. You attract people who want to live in those parts of the country, not D.C. insiders. But I do think we need some fresh thinking. And here's the thing, just practically speaking, you need grassroots Republicans to power this organization with volunteering and donations. I think it's going to be very difficult to energize people to want to give money, to want to volunteer their time with the RNC if they don't see a change in direction.
So I just want to make sure that I got an earlier comment that said no audio, but then I had other people chiming in from Facebook. So I just want to make sure if you're listening from Facebook right now that you can hear just fine. Apparently people from YouTube aren't having any trouble. I did have trouble the other day where the YouTube was fine, but the Facebook was out of sync. It was very strange because it's all streaming out of the same program. So I don't know what was up with that. So if there's a problem, go ahead and let me know in the chat. But yeah, I got some people all around. Someone from Guam, Vancouver. So yeah, I got people from all over. Thank you guys for watching and tuning and chiming in live. So to what Ron DeSantis said, I don't know if that's really going to work with having the headquarters elsewhere. There's just so much going on centralized in DC that I don't know if moving the headquarters elsewhere makes sense. I understand the wanting people to feel more rooted with the grassroots and not entangled into the beast. But you do have to fundraise, and a lot of those people run in so many circles, and it's you, I don't the proximity to everyone. Just I don't know. DC makes more sense in that regard, and then you have these state parties everywhere. Now that doesn't mean that they don't need a second headquarters, but I don't know if that's a good quite use of money. I like the idea of it. I just don't know if like the practicality of it actually works. So though, I love DeSantis to pieces. Um as far as the comment he made at the end about people wanting to donate and volunteer if someone else, isn't taking over, I think he may have a point. Now, I think Rana will still be able to raise a lot of money still, and people will, I don't know, time heals wounds, and at the end of the day, people want to win. So if she does end up taking the victory, I still think they're going to be able to build a machine. But I think there's issues with the Republican Party all across the country. Like there's Michigan right now. We have like 11 people running for chair. It's less than people dropped out, but the number was like 11. And it's a crazy race here, a lot going on. And there's problems all over the country with the local Republican parties. I complained yesterday. I'm like, how did people let George Santos get by? I'm like, that's just a failure on so many different levels, including like the party. Like you should do like so the voters should do some research into who they're really voting for. It's curious to me that the media let this happen. It didn't like blow up, his record and his drag queen days. And that's something that we're finding out now. Maybe they wanted a drag queen in Congress. That's a theory. But what about the research team? I assume, I don't know. The Michigan Republican Party was there's some big donors in Michigan that would give into the party. So we had a pretty good operation. There, people would come all over from the country to go into the Michigan Republican Party because they saw that as a good gateway to go to DC. So we had the other state parties didn't have jobs like I had. I was the creative director, so I do all like the video editing and make graphics and all that stuff. Not every state party had the kind of budget and staff to have someone like me doing that work full time. And so I assume everybody should have a research team. um, I think that's something that's really important, but everyone needs like a good ground game, and they need to have, people doing data and digital stuff, but there's problems all over. And should the RNC be helping to help the infrastructure of all these folks? They should, and they do, but it's to some degree there's some insulation with these folks. I mean, you get help from the RNC, you stay in communications with them all, but I'm just gonna be honest with you, there are messes all over. There's if you think just changing the national face of the party, or changing, like if you had gotten McConnell out, or if you traded McCarthy, which people are happy with McCarthy because he told off the media the other day. If you just change out these people and you think that that's going to solve all the problems, you're dead wrong. You're just absolutely wrong. There's just so much going on that is contributing to the toxic nature, the losses, the ideological purity test. I was as the Daily Wire situation has bubbled over so much, I'm seeing some people question, if you're not familiar with it, Steven Crowder accused different conservative organizations of being in bed with big tech, and he showed a video with some stuff from Daily Wire of a term sheet. He called it a contract, but it was a term sheet, like a beginning open negotiation. And so he didn't like a lot of stuff in there. Daily Wire outed themselves, which I kind of think they had to, but I have a huge video that I'm going to be releasing that goes into my thoughts and everything surrounding that. It's very comprehensive, but I'm just giving you the rundown so I can make my point. So they outed themselves and they went through the whole contract or the term sheet and explained their thinking behind it. And but some people see Steven's side because there were fees, like if Steven was demonetized, which he's already been demonetized, but there's also like if he didn't deliver all his episodes or a piece of major content. Like imagine Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? Let's say he didn't do that. Like he was supposed to do it but didn't do it. Like should there be a fine? I think that's reasonable that you get paid less for not delivering on your stuff. But Steven complained about all of it, but the framing is they're in the bed with big tech because they would penalize you if you lose your sponsors or if you lose ad revenue. And Daily Wire's thing is if we're not making money here, especially because of something that you did, then we're both going to eat the cost. We're both going to make less money. Why should we be the only ones making less money? And Steven Crowder's thing is, well, because it's your business, so you should assume the risk. And Daily Wire's like, we're not your benefactor. We're doing like a joint business venture. So I don't know what ultimately they could have ended up negotiating, but according to Daily Wire, Stevens wanted too much money because they wanted like 50 million over 4 years. That was the initial offer. And that includes like production costs and stuff for him too. But his team and on Timcast, they're playing games a bit with whether they countered, because at first Jared was like, we didn't counter, and they're like, nobody countered, and like, well, the lawyer might have countered. And like, I'm pretty sure if your lawyer countered and your lawyer wouldn't have countered with something that wouldn't have made you happy. So okay. But according to Jeremy Boring, the counter was $30 million a year. So that was too much, and that kind of ended the conversation. So some people have been saying, well, you know what, maybe Daily Wire is actually in the arms of big tech, because Ben was like pro-vaccine, and they don't talk enough about election integrity and all kinds of other stuff. And I'm like, okay, they all have different opinions. I was furious at Ben Shapiro. If you've been following me long enough, you know that I was so mad at Ben Shapiro at the beginning of the pandemic. And I used to watch Crowder pretty religiously, but when he was like, was it Thursday, every Thursday you come on? When it became Mug Club, it was like, I don't know. I liked him more in doses, I guess. So I don't follow Steven like I used to in the past, but I do I do have a subscription to Daily Wire, which I got after What Is Woman came out. And I do watch Ben's show frequently. Like I was so like annoyed with him. I was not watching him during the pandemic. I'm like, I'm gonna watch Michael Knowles instead. And I was waiting for them to like fight on social media. Maybe they did backstage, but I was disappointed they didn't have like more of a public fight about it. But because I wanted the drama, I guess. But I didn't like his opinion on that, but I do know that other people had a different opinion. So saying that Daily Wire isn't speaking up against the vaccine or something, okay, well, you're just telling me that you watched Ben and you didn't watch Knowles, like, so you're not familiar with the whole thing. But then they say like, well, they're not covering the election integrity. What people mean by that is because they definitely cover election stuff, and how Knowles covers stuff is definitely different how Ben covers stuff. But I think what people mean is Ben doesn't believe that the election was he's pointing out shady stuff, but if he doesn't believe that it was legitimately all stolen from Trump, and that Trump is the rightful president and the Biden isn't really the president, if you don't believe that, then well, that explains why Daily Wire is a slave to big tech. And I'm like, maybe they just don't believe that. Like, and you can disagree. Like someone mentioned, that Ben downplayed 2,000 Mules, and I saw his video on 2,000 Mules, and he thought it was interesting. But his question was, well, like, this is shady stuff what they're doing, but are the ballots that they're transporting, are they still real ballots? So if they're still real ballots, this is like shady stuff that's going on. But if it's not fake people, then they're still legitimate votes or ballots. So just because people don't see things eye to eye on some stuff doesn't mean that you should kick everybody out of the party. But I will tell you, election integrity stuff, there, it doesn't matter if you're pro-life, moment of conception, if you're traditional marriage, if you're, limited government, know the Constitution back and forth. If you don't believe that the election in 2020 was changed by Dominion software, then they're like, I don't want to support you. And that's obviously not everybody, but that is a problem right now in the Republican Party. I'm just going to be really, really honest with you. I'm going to be really, really honest with you. Like, and I'll give you an example. At the Republican primary debate with the 5 candidates who were left after the signature massacre, there was Tudor Dixon, there was Ralph Reinbart, there was Ryan Kelly, there was Kevin Rinke, and there was Garrett Soldano. So they had a question. This was in Macomb. Do you believe that the election was stolen or whatever? So Tudor Dixon, I think at first had the question directed at her. Now she had a pretty calculated response, and she starts talking about things that like everyone can agree on. Like the New York Times, I'm sorry, it wasn't New York Times, it was Time Magazine had put out an article about how we fortified the election. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, you guys are just explaining how you move certain things along to make sure you got the result that you wanted. You talk about Hunter Biden laptop, and an ordinance or some kind of order from, or directive, we'll say, from our Secretary of State that was like, well, the ballot signatures don't have to match exactly, or you can lessen the scrutiny that you put on it. So she starts listing things that make it all sound sketchy, and then I thought that was a good answer, one that doesn't make the left go, this person is crazy. Like it was a very good political answer. And then Pastor Randbart, I'm not saying his name right. Oh, I don't think so, but the pastor, God bless his heart, they're like, no, we gotta let's like raise hands, like who thinks the election was actually stolen. And they're like, who thinks that like votes were changed, like in that regard. Not that a bunch of shady stuff happened where they did a bunch of like policy decisions that shouldn't have happened, like they're like fake ballots like changed the result. So as I'm like watching this, I'm like, why are they doing this? Because it's only going to lead to bad things as far as the media going into the general election. And I'm not trying to argue with you about what you believe, how far the outcome was changed. But I recall a conversation I had with a strategist in Michigan. And he asked me, like, well, what would you say to people about if you're asked by the media, or you have a candidate and they get asked by the media, do they think the election was rigged? And the reason why the media asks those questions is not to see if you're crazy. Because you know what? If it was a Democrat, they wouldn't even bother with that. Because so many Democrats believe that 2016, and still to this day, believe that that election wasn't legitimate because of Russian interference or something. Like I saw someone the other day on Twitter that was like talking to a Fox News person, and then they said something about Russia collusion, and they're like, "Oh, we got a Russia hoaxer in 2023." Like y'all still into that? So they uplifted Stacey Abrams and stuff. They're Hakeem Jeffries. He's an election denier. He's the minority leader right now. So it's not, the left doesn't ask, the media wasn't asking those questions because they could be like, burn the witch, they're a crazy person. They wanted to ask those questions because they knew the Republican base would treat those people terribly if they did not deliver the answer that was acceptable. So I think that's pretty amazing. Again, just because people have like a difference of opinion doesn't mean that their whole ideology is corrupt and you just throw the whole like person out. Like as far as conservative values, like that's not something that should get you kicked out of the party, especially if you're still like stomping for voter ID. I think you should vote on election day. I have gone into big rants why I don't like early voting. I won't do that because I'm like I've gotten way off topic. But anyway, there's a really toxic environment in the Republican Party for like super, super, super purist opinions on stuff that isn't really key ideological things. And that's just an example. So people thinking that if Rana is no longer in charge, that is going to change the whole landscape and we're just going to win. That's not true. And you do need big donors. I'm assuming that either one who wins will be able to pull big donors. Small donations are good. In Michigan, I will say that we have been subsidized by big donors, and depending who wins the race, we might not have big donors who are interested in giving to the Republican Party anymore, and that'll be not good, because I'm not sure how some of these folks, if they win, how they'll be able to run it at all. But we'll see. People have different plans. People have some plans where they want to generate revenue that are pretty interesting. Not great interesting though. It's interesting though. Very interesting. So I don't know. We'll see how the RNC race plays out. But I think it's really interesting that DeSantis weighed in. It appears that he's not pro Rana, which Trump has stayed pretty silent, but Rana's pick for co-chair is someone that people have signaled like, no, this is like a Trump guy. And this is signaling kind of that Trump is with her. So it's interesting to me. It's interesting to me. But I would think that either one, because I would think whoever gets in would still be good for Trump. So we'll see soon enough who the winner is in the RNC race for sure. But let's move on. In Florida, there is kind of the new propaganda with kind of how people were freaking out about the Don't Say Gay bill. Of course, there was no Don't Say Gay bill. That wasn't even in the bill, that you couldn't say gay. But now there is a bill about, well, there was, in Florida, you can't teach propaganda type stuff. Like they came after like CRT stuff. They're very much, we don't want kids indoctrinated, we want them educated. So there was an AP class that was teaching like African American studies and stuff that they rejected, and now the media and other folks are framing it as like they're cutting out African American history. They don't want people to learn Black history and stuff, and it's just absolutely not true. And it is very reminiscent of the propaganda that the media was willing to run during the whole time of the Parental Rights and Education bill. Some people, I think to this day, probably still don't even know that it's called the Parental Rights and Education bill. But I'm going to go ahead and play Ron DeSantis and his reply to this.
Our education standards, not only.
Hold on a second.
in the state of Florida, our education standards not only don't prevent, but they require teaching Black history, all the important things. That's part of our core curriculum. This was a separate course on top of that for advanced placement credit. And the issue is we have guidelines and standards in Florida. We want education, not indoctrination. If you fall on the side of indoctrination, we're going to decline. If it's education, then we will do this course. So when I heard it didn't meet the standards, I figured, yeah, they may be doing serious. It's way more than that. This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory? That is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids. And so when you look to see they have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda. And so that's the wrong side of the line for Florida standards. We believe in teaching kids facts and how to think, but we don't believe they should have an agenda imposed on them. When you try to use Black history to shoehorn in queer theory, you are clearly trying to use that for political purposes.
Yeah, so so people there's out there people defending it, saying there's queer Black people. So so there's Black people doing everything, including stuff that people shouldn't be doing. That doesn't mean that you gotta have a whole section in like a AP high school course or something about queer theory. And so let me show you guys a bit about some things that were some objections raised to it. So there was intersectionality and activism. So there's that. There was Black queer studies, movements for Black lives, Black feminist literary thought. So yeah, there's that. The reparations movement, Black study and Black struggle in the 21st century. So if you don't think that those things are woke and that people intend to teach any sort of objective stuff, then you're crazy. So it's funny when people keep talking about we just want to teach history, we just want to teach history. Like, no, you don't. And then when they want to incorporate CRT, or they try to say that it's not CRT, or people justify CRT, they say it's not in the schools and they get mad when it's banned in the schools. And then they're like, no, it's just history. It's like, no, CRT is not history. Like in the writings, they talk about how, critical race theorists are not subjective. I mean, they're not objective. They believe in subjectivity. A lot of it is about experience and feelings and all sorts of things in your observable world, as opposed to if you want your kids learning history, it's like, this is what happened. And instead of, they'd be like, this is our interpretation through this particular worldview. And I don't think you send your kids to learn about a particular worldview. You want them to learn about dates and times and, events. So including things like queer theory and intersectionality, and Kimberly Crenshaw was on that list. And Kimberly Crenshaw is, one of the writers of, intersectionality is her thing, but critical race theory is also her thing. And she's gone on Joy Reid's show to talk about how, I know if critical race theory was in schools. And then she does these like summer school program things where they talk to, different educators and talk about how they incorporate critical race theory insights into schools. So no, they don't teach the entire legal theory, which critical race theory has branched off into other sort of things. If you read critical race theory and introduction, they talk about spinoffs of critical race theory, which people try to denounce, like Robin DiAngelo, who wrote White Fragility, and Ibrahim X. Kendi, who's like anti-racism, but they're products of that. They certainly are. You can't just disregard them because they got some bad press for their dumb opinions. What white fragility? That was like all over the place in 2020. People were talking about that like crazy, and you had all these white people vomiting out their white guilt. I thought it was gross. It was very frustrating living in 2020. It was very frustrating seeing people, because half my school career I went to like an urban school, and the other half I was in a very rural area. And then all of a sudden I was like, it was really diverse. You had like in Pontiac where I grew up, where you had, Asians and blacks and Hispanics and white kids. And I guess you still had that in like Holly, but it was very scarce. I was there weren't a lot of black kids. There's maybe like, I don't even know if there's 10 in my graduating class. So to see, I don't know, I had good experiences in Holly. There were, sometimes people would ask you questions culturally about things they didn't understand. Maybe somebody said something that was insensitive, but they didn't say it to be malicious, or, you get the occasional person who wanted to touch your hair, And one time, a Mormon kid brought up out of nowhere that black people cursed in their religion. So that was unwarranted. Like, not information I asked for. It was like literally out of the blue. I didn't even have to like say anything, because everyone was always like, "Oh, you crazy kid." But I made good friends out there. I was treated pretty well. Stuck to my lane pretty much. Everyone knew me as a Christian girl who could sing very well, pretty much. And I graduated number 9 in my class. But to see like so many of those kids in 2020 like apologize for their inherent racism and write stuff online, I'm like, were you racist the whole time I knew you? Ooh, I mean, I guess that's news to me. Or are you just saying that, of all things, to virtue signal? And if that's the case, it's pretty freaking weird and detestable. So it was like living in the twilight zone. It was so strange. It was so weird. Everyone just apologizing for their white guilt. And I knew people who bought like White Fragility, was like reading it and like, I don't know, changing their mindsets and stuff. So we can't just pretend like it wasn't a thing. I can't just do that. It was such a I'll never forget that year, and how disappointing so many people were. it was just a frustrating time. I felt like so many people had lost their sanity, or were hiding it for the sake of virtue, fake virtue. It was really bizarre. But anyway, we don't need this stuff in schools. And maybe if there was like an advanced lit class for like seniors or something, and you had some I still don't think it should be in there. I mean, when you get AP, you get, like, those are like college kind of credits, so they're like college kind of courses. But I don't know. That's stuff you can go to college and learn that crap. I wouldn't if I was in school and I said, "Dad," I said, "Dad, I took this African Americans course study thinking I'm going to learn about, I don't know, some great stuff. Maybe I didn't hear about Harriet Tubman and other folks in basic history classes." Which, you know what, there's people always complain about what you don't learn in school. As an adult, you can go out and research stuff yourself. There's stuff that I'm sure I learned, but I probably forgot. But there's stuff that I definitely learned on my own as an adult, especially as I studied. And for those of you who don't know, who are kind of new to my channel, I write books, and one of the books that I wrote was a historical fiction fantasy. I'll show it to you guys really quickly. I won't break down what it is, but I just want to show you the cover of it. Well, here's uh-oh. Give me 1 second. Here we go. So, The Color of God's Eyes and The Song on the Devil's Lips. So you guys can get that on paperback or you can get it on Kindle or Kindle Unlimited. Yeah, so that's my series. So I did a ton of research for it. I mean, it's not like the most historically accurate thing. I took a lot of liberty. It's a historical fiction fantasy. Um, but I did a ton of research, and there's lots of things that maybe I learned, but I forgot because there's so much knowledge that you consume in school. And I was a very good student. But you just can't retain everything and you don't remember everything. But there was stuff I'm sure I never learned. But you can take that initiative and learn it later in life. But to think that maybe you're thinking, oh, we're gonna learn some more things about the draft riots or I don't know, it's just a bunch of different things. And then you learn about queer theory and feminist literature. And if I went home to my dad, my pastor dad, where he's senior pastor now, my brother's the pastor of the church, and said, "We learned about queer theory today." Oh my gosh. He'd be so mad. He'd be so mad. I mean, I would have been mad if like I went to class and that was a subject and be like, "Bro, what does God do anything?" But he'd be really mad. So these people think they're slick, and of course the media will carry water for them for sure. But DeSantis is pretty good at dismantling the media, setting the record straight, and that's what he did in that video. So they'll continue their narrative nationwide and people will continue to push back on it. Unfortunately, I'm sure there's a bazillion TikToks about how Ron DeSantis hates Black people. So we'll have to continue correcting the record and making sure people know the truth. But that's a part of why I'm here doing Black Tea News. Last thing, and I guess we'll talk about this very quickly because I don't want to go too long over today. My plan isn't to go over, but there is a statue that is now up. There was a Pakistani artist who created it, and here's one of the tweets about the monstrosity. New York City is taking down a statue honoring Teddy Roosevelt and putting up a statue honoring some hideous abortion idol. The decline is a choice. So the statue is called Now, like in all caps. And it's supposed to be a Medusa. I think Ben Shapiro made a joke like if you stare at it too long, your vagina will turn to a stone. I don't know if he said that or uterus, but why? And it is supposed to be about reproductive rights, aka abortion, because I mean, when you have to have already reproduced by the time you have the abortion. That's the point. Something has reproduced and you would like it to not live. So they have all this coded language that's just not an accurate representation of what goes on. Okay, first of all, it's ugly. Weird. I guess people would just say there's a lot of myth. Some people have said demonic, satanic. I guess you could say, we have a ton of stuff that's, mythology type statues everywhere, but maybe they just mean demonic because of what it represents. Michael Knowles said the next Republican who runs for mayor should promise to take down the statue. Like that should be one of their campaign promises. And probably so. I don't know how many people are going to be pressed about it actually in New York City. I don't know. They're very, very radical on abortion, and they're complaining because they say it's under attack. New York, you can get abortion. There's some places in the country where there's not many restrictions on abortion. New York is one of those places. So the freakouts of people from places in California or New York and other, wherever, about abortion, especially when Roe was overturned, is just dramatic, very dramatic. Now in Michigan, there was like about to be a total ban, so I guess I get that, and they ended up winning out in the election. I won't go too deep into it. So now we're a super radical abortion state too. We just got to keep our chin ups and keep on fighting on that front. But it is pressing. If we go back to 2020 and we think about the statues that people were trying to get taken down and attacking. I think there wasn't there like even one of like Frederick Douglass that somebody did something to. I mean, people were just psychotic with how offended they were with historical statues or whatever. And we erect a statue for abortion. Well, they'll just say reproductive rights, but it's like, bro, we kill like 1 million babies every year. And I used to say 600,000, but those are like the CDC numbers. So when you guys look up abortion numbers, you got to know that the CDC, states are not required to automatically report. And one of the states that doesn't always like report their stuff is California. So sometimes the numbers is missing California. So the Guttmacher Institute, named for Alan Guttmacher, who took over Planned Parenthood, you might be like, that sounds like a terrible source. Most people like trust them on the actual abortion numbers, but who knows? It could be more. But according to their numbers, like we're closer to like 1 million a year as far as induced abortions. Because sometimes people will say, well, there's miscarriage and stuff. No, we're talking about induced abortions, not spontaneous ones. They're technically called spontaneous abortions when you have a miscarriage. We're talking about induced abortions, like deliberate ones. So that's what we're doing in the United States. So I know people have their differing opinions on it, but most of the time when people have one, it is out of some kind of convenience situation, not because of like health of the mother, not even for, and I don't think we should discriminate against the unborn due to the way they come into the world. So I'm not for the exceptions that people believe are acceptable ones. I think in the only instance where you really should have an exception is when there's like people's lives like actually at risk. So but even that's rare, very 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 rare. Like 90, if I said 95% are out of some kind of convenience sort of situation, I think that would be like a generous sort of statistic. I think what we do is monstrous on a genocidal sort of level, and that we're erecting these statues to let society know that this is such a major concern for us, and where our minds and hearts are at. I think it's really damning. And I hope one day that the sort of passion that people had for taking down Robert E. Lee statues, they have passion for taking down these sort of statues to represent the millions upon millions of children who are killed every year. So it's a sick, sad world. It's a sick, sad world. Anyway, thank you guys for watching today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Folks, thank you for watching live and commenting from all over. Very much appreciate it. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com across the stream or on my website. If you would like to help with that overhead, anything helps, whether it's $20, $50, etc. God bless you if you do it. I will start rolling out some of my footage from over the weekend. I did go for the March for Life. Next week, I'll be showing a lot of content regarding that, something every day. So just be prepared for that. It was kind of like the thing I said I would do with thanking my sponsors, etc. So I'm very appreciative of the people who helped me be able to go to the march. My sister accompanied me, and it was a relief that that was one thing I really didn't have to worry about when I had people help me to go. So I like to do more things than that, and I got some great interviews that I think you guys will really really like. So stay tuned for that as we start rolling that out. As far as my Daily Wire video, gosh, it turned out to be so long. It is a comprehensive video. I watched so much content regarding this issue. Someone like on TikTok not too long ago was like, you can't be a reporter if you don't look at both sides. I'm like, I guarantee you, I have looked at more content regarding this issue than you. I watched Steven's video. I watched Jeremy's response. I watched Steven's leaked audio call. I watched Candace on Timcast and Steven on Timcast. And Jordan Peterson's daughter talk about it. Brett Cooper talk about it. I watched Ben talk about it. Like I watched Young Turks talk about it. I watched is that Sam Cedar, that guy who left his. I watched all kinds of people talk about this issue. I looked up not gay Jared. Still, it's under an NDA. Can't say anything about it. He tweeted some jokes though, and he did tweet a little bit about it, but or something about him. I looked up Quarter Black Jarrett, who used to work with Steven, and he no longer does, but he said something about it. I looked up a ton of information that will be in this video. So you may not agree with me, but it will be comprehensive. So it'll what time is it? I could probably get out tonight, but I'm probably gonna stream it tomorrow. I'll probably stream it tomorrow. So also, I'm going to be preaching my church on Friday. So if you're interested in attending, I will post the address and some information, and I will post a post on, I guess, YouTube and Facebook. So watch out for that. And if you're in the area or you want to travel, I invite you to come and hear me speak. I do a pretty good job. So I'll be preaching at 7 p.m. in Rochester Hills, Michigan. So make sure you guys go to the website, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, merch, and make sure that you guys go ahead and you pre-order my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, and I will see you guys tomorrow.